What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Bull Combo, your source for album reviews, tech reviews, and more. Today we're going to be reviewing Underoath's new album, Erase Me. So stick around, I'll let you guys know my thoughts and opinions on the album and whether or not you guys should be excited for Underoath's return. It's been 8 years since Underoath released the new album, and quite a lot has gone on in the world and in the music scene since that time frame. It's pretty clear also that a lot has changed with Underoath in those last 8 years as well. The release of their first single brought instant polarization with the first use of profanity in any Underoath song. They went on to declare themselves no longer a Christian band, and they described it as an us against them style mentality, so it's not so much a loss of faith, it's more of they stopped wanting to label themselves something that would pit them up against other metal fans, because the metal scene is really supposed to be about unity. So I can definitely understand their viewpoint on this, not wanting to create something that's so divisive in nature when it comes to their music and just kind of being all-encompassing. It's a very interesting approach to this album, and I have a feeling that that change alone is going to turn off a lot of fans, a lot of people that did listen to them because they did carry the Christian label. Personally, I don't really care whether or not they drop the Christian label. I think music is music. So labels and narratives aside, the album's sound is just as polarizing as the band's change in perspective. I really do feel like this is a very mixed album for Underoath. I've listened to Underoath all the way back since They're Only Chasing Safety. I'd have to say that that and Define the Great Line are probably my two favorite albums by Underoath to date. And unfortunately, on this album, I feel like they really stepped away from that sound pretty much completely. It's clear that in their later releases, Lost in the Sound of Separation as well as O, the band's sound did change as they grew, as the members grew, as they progressed as musicians. Unfortunately, I really don't feel like this progression was something that really fit Underoath very well. And I do understand that bands grow and bands change, but like I said earlier, a lot has changed in the metal scene since Underoath last came out with an album. Some of the things that they did on those last albums that felt fresh, new, and exciting at the time no longer feel that way, either because other bands have already done what they've done or because other bands have taken it to the next step. So I feel like on this album, whereas on previous albums it might have sounded really unique and everyone might have been like, wow, Underoath came out with a really solid, creative album. I feel like on this album, a lot of the stuff that you hear is stuff that you heard over the last 5 years in other bands. There is a few good songs sprinkled in on this album. Some songs that really bring you back to the old Underoath sound and really kind of have a more classic Underoath sound. And those songs I think a lot of people are going to live for on this album just because they're hit or miss. You'll have a song that sounds a lot like Underoath, and then the next song sounds like something that probably belongs more on Sleepwave. There's a lot of stuff on this album that really kind of reminds me of Bring Me the Horizon, which isn't really a great thing to me, not because Bring Me the Horizon isn't a good band, but because that makes it feel like it's already been done before. I don't ever want to listen to something where I feel like I've already heard parts of it before. That's just not enjoyable to me. So, when a band does a revival album, so to speak, like this, it's been 8 years since their last album, so I think we can classify this as a bit of a revival album for Underoath. I feel like when a band decides to become a band again and decides that they want to release a new album, I think that it's really important that they try to revisit a little bit of what made them so special as a band. When you've released albums consecutively every few years, it's a lot easier to be creative and be experimental and say, we've released 3 albums that all sound very similar. We're going to do something that we want to do because we want to do it. And when a band's being consistent like that, they're releasing music that their fans have loved for so long and they decide to make the sound change, it's really on them. They've decided they want to take the band in a different direction and they want to invite the fans to come along on the journey with them. Now, oftentimes, it's a little bit easier for that to happen when the band's been consistently releasing content. Now, in this scenario, Underoath hasn't released an album in 8 years, so for them to come out with something that sounds like anything other than classic Underoath is a really big risk, I feel like, for them as a band, especially if they're really trying to have a revival, a bit of a resurgence. I feel like in that scenario, you would want your return album to have as much familiarity as possible to the fans that haven't heard you in a while. So on this album, I do feel like they did a good job with a few of the songs, making it seem like, the classic Underoath sound, but for a lot of the stuff on this album, it's just extremely, extremely experimental and really just out of line for anything that really sounds like Underoath. And I think that that's the reason why we listen to Underoath, because Underoath has such a unique and such a recognizable sound for so long. that when you listen to Underoath and you can't really recognize that it's them, that kind of says something. And you know, I know that a lot of people are going to have mixed opinions on this album. Some people are going to love it. Some people are probably going to hate it. I think I'm somewhere in the middle right now. You know, on any given listen of this album, I have a different opinion, I feel like. And maybe it's my mindset when I listen to the album, maybe it's the situation in which I'm listening to the album. But I feel like each time I listen to this album, I get a little bit of a different vibe from it. Sometimes it's a positive vibe, sometimes it's a negative vibe, and I'm really having a hard time nailing down how I feel about this album. And I think it just might be because of all of the creative, experimental things that they did throughout the album that kind of turn it off for me. I just have a really hard time latching onto a lot of the choruses in the songs. I feel like there isn't really as much creativity in this album that there was in previous albums, and I feel like a lot of it is just going through the paces. You know, and there's some bright spots, there's some songs that sound pretty catchy, there's some spots in some songs that are catchy and you make you go, oh hey, I like that. But I feel like for a majority of this, it's just a combination of different attempts at songs that Underoath created, and for me, it doesn't have the emotional intrigue that previous Underoath albums did. It doesn't have that emotional attachment to it that I feel like I can really get behind. So I'm having a really hard time enjoying this album for those reasons. And you know, like I said, I think this is going to be a really divisive, a really polarizing album for a lot of people. People are going to love it and people are going to hate it. And at the end of the day, I really can't tell you how to feel about the album. I can just let you know, what to expect from it. And that is to expect a lot of things that sound a lot different from what you've heard from Underoath before. The first single they released, I feel like in a way was a little bit misleading because you'd expect that to be the sound of the entire album. You know, they're releasing a song that you would think would encapsulate the sound that they're going for on the album. And I don't really feel like their initial single did a good job of doing that, because the rest of the album sounds so much different, from that song. I feel like that song was probably hands down the heaviest song on the album, and the most aggressive, and ironically the song that most matched Underoath's previous style. And maybe they did that to incite some interest in their new album, to bring some intrigue back into their new album, to get people thinking, oh hey, maybe Underoath is going to return to their original sound and come out with an album that sounds like it could have been released in 2006 or 2005. So in a way, I do feel like that was misleading. I don't really think the album sounds like that single does. And for all intents and purposes, I feel like the album's a pretty big letdown compared to that single. I think that single showed a lot of promise, and it showed that Underoath could go back to their original style and be heavy hitters again and sound really awesome. And I don't think that they leveraged that as much as they probably could have. So, for those reasons, while I think this is a decent album, I don't think it's the greatest Underoath album ever. In fact, I'd probably put it as the weakest Underoath album to date. Now the band hasn't come out with an album in 8 years, so maybe the next album they come out with will be really solid, and this is just them finding themselves again. I'm not sure. But regardless, at this point, this doesn't really feel like the Underoath that we know and love. It's a bit of a bummer, to be honest with you guys, to come up here and do this video and tell you guys that I'm not a huge fan of this album, because I did really consider Underoath to be one of the stronger bands in the scene when they were at their height. But at this point, I feel like it might have just been past Underoath's time. And while this album might be great for them as musicians, maybe it's just something they want to get off their chest, I don't really think that this is going to be something that's going to renew the love for Underoath or bring back any sort of major explosion for Underoath back onto the scene. I feel like this might just be their goodbye album. That might just be their last attempt to put some music together, and after this they might just call it a day. And hopefully I'm wrong, hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully they do go on to make 3 or 4 or 5 more amazing albums together as a band. But you can't help but get that feeling when you listen to this album that this might be the last hurrah for them. And obviously it will depend on the success of the album, but from a sound perspective, I really feel like they've kind of veered away from a lot of the sound that they had in their previous albums. And at this point, it's just gotten so experimental that it doesn't really sound like Underoath, and it kind of sounds like more of a combination of all the other bands out on the scene right now, which to me doesn't really draw a lot of interest. So if you guys are looking for the better songs on the album, I would say that the best songs on the album are Rapture, I Hate It, and Hold Your Breath. Those 3 for me definitely have some replay value, definitely have some catchiness to them. I think far and above some of the other songs on the album. So those would be the 3 songs I'd recommend if you want to check this album out, get a feel for it, and make your own decision on whether or not you like it. I'm interested to see what you guys think about this album. I'm interested to see what your thoughts and opinions are, so I'm going to encourage you guys to comment down below. I would really like to see what you guys think. I know I'm going to see a lot of mixed opinions on this, but either way, I would really encourage you guys to share your thoughts and opinions down below. If you like this video, if you like the honesty about it, if you didn't like it, make sure to hit the like or the dislike button down below. I won't judge you guys. I know this is a little bit different from the super positive videos I've posted lately, so if you like the content that you're seeing here, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and click the bell to get notified. I post a new video every week, and I want to make sure you guys get notification of it, so click that subscribe button if you are liking what you see. I want to thank you guys for checking this video out. As always, I hope you have a great day, and until next time, we will see you soon.